The title and the concept of this exhibition has been borrowed from Sohrawardi, the Persian Sufi master and mystic philosopher. This book, the Solace of Lovers, or as we call it in our language, Munesul Oshaq, is in fact the bridge between the concept of love in Sufism, philosophy, and rational thinking. The book is about three brothers, love, beauty, and sorrow, and their journey. This exhibition is about this journey, about love, beauty, and sorrow in the history of Iran.
1001 Nights is a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales compiled in Arabic between 9th and 10th century. But the frame story are most probably drawn from the Middle Persian work Hezar Afsan, or 1000 Tales, written between the 7th and 8th century. A translation from Old Persian relied partly on Sanskrit elements. The book then translated to Farsi from Arabic by the Persian writer and translator Abdullatif Tasuji in 19th century. Lithographs exhibited in this exhibition are from the separated pages from the 1889 edition illustrated by the draftsman Mirza Nasrullah and published in Tehran. Nargis Hashemi was born in Tehran in 1979. Her Qajar series, based on Qajar mural paintings, illustrations of books from the era, and royal court art, began in 2006 and 2007, and has been shown at many international exhibitions. With this and other collections, the artist has positioned herself as one of the most remarkable figures of contemporary Iranian painting. In this series, Nargis Hashemi takes images from early Qajar art, including images of Fath Ali Shah and his princess, women of the court, as well as court musicians and acrobats, and places the figures in architectural plans. In this way, she begins to study the identity in Persian painting. For Hashemi, the study of the silhouette in Persian art, compositions, figures, portraits, and the conceptual meaning of architecture marks the beginnings of an investigation into the concept of home, and investigations that she continues to the present day. In these pieces, Hashemi depicts beautiful Qajar-era women dancing and being seductive. Her settings are sometimes without any men, and when men are included, they have an entirely passive role, even though they are dressed as kings and princes. But what these pieces represent more than anything else is the safe haven of a home. In her later series, Nargis focuses on concepts like family, tradition, and ritual. And by changing her point of view and looking at the scene from above, the architectural plans of these Persian houses once again allow her to return to the concept of home and safe haven. Farah Usuli, who was born in Zanjan in 1953, is one of the most prominent artists in the Persian tradition of miniature paintings. In fact, if the miniatures had followed a natural process of evolution, they would probably have arrived where Farah Usuli and very few other artists have taken them. Her personal interpretations of Persian poems and stories and subjects like oppressions, violence, love, hope, and envy have formed the basis of her work over the years. For Usuli, no subject is absolute. Concepts like love and truth, good and evil constantly changed hands between angels and devils. She depicts these constant changes in her works just as she has always observed them in her surroundings. In her works, by making direct references to European masterpieces, she allows the viewer to make a connection to these familiar works of art at first glance, while she is portraying the suppression of women and, in larger scale, the humanity in her country and in the world. Francisco, Ahmad, and I uses one of the most important pieces of Goya's Disasters of War series, What More Can Be Done, to depict one of the most painful images of contemporary Iranian history. The other name included in the title refers to Ahmad Shamlu, Iran's political poet, and verses from his poem Khoftegan, or The Sleepers, that he wrote to pay homage to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which is written on this work. Of those who stand with wide eyes staring at death, none are awake. In this work, as you can see, a beautiful woman being slaughtered alive as she quietly stares out of those who are watching this act of cruelty. A woman trapped among men whose eyes reveal they have no doubt about the act they must commit. In the other piece, Fra Angelico, Ahmad, and I, Usuli depicts the silence enforced upon women by referencing to Fra Angelico's The Annunciation to Mary by the Gabriel. The work also includes a quotation from Shamlu's poem, Beginnings. I realized there would be no glad tidings. It was only a mirage along the way. In this video, Usuli depicts a woman told to remain silent by a man in angel wings, who is also armed to the teeth. The woman stares back at him with her arms crossed, holding an open book on her lap. It is a book that must be either read or written. In this piece, Usuli is a narrator of voices that have been silenced for different reasons. Ars Poetica, made in 1968 by the renowned Iranian director, musician, and poet Khosrow Sinai, was a collaboration between Tabatabai as a sculptor and puppeteer and Sinai as poet and director, which can be called the first Iranian conceptual cinepoetry. The movie is about a white dove being trapped in a kingdom where the inhabitants lost their poetic soul and became soulless figures made out of scrap metals. The dove, which is the symbol of free soul, struggles not to turn into iron. Khosrow Sinai, born in 1941, was a key figure in Iranian art scene. Sinai graduated in music education from the Vienna Music Conservatory and graduated as cinema and television director from Vienna Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. Decades later, in 1997, he directed a movie, The Autumn Alley, about Jaza Tabatabai's life and works. He passed away on August 2020 at the age of 79 from COVID-19. Jaza Tabatabai, born in 1930 and passed away in 2008, was a prominent Iranian painter, sculptor, and poet. He himself describes his art as follows: I do not paint the dreams of 1001 nights. I portray the desires and dreams of people. Under the otherworldly veil of images from 1001 nights, I paint the thousands and one pains and sorrows of people. The language of Farsi or Persian language lacks gender prepositions. If the name of the beloved is not mentioned, one will be unable to guess the beloved's gender and will only know the gender of the lover, because the lover is often the narrator and known to readers. Jaz Tabatabayi's works has the same quality. The lovers he depicts are young men and women with seductive eyes, but what has grabbed their interests and affection is without gender. The works on show in this exhibition are from his Neither Bird Nor Human series, the series that began in early 1960s and for which the artist received the grand prize of the Imperial Court in 1964. The bird, which Tabatabai has depicted numerous times, both in his paintings and sculptures, seems to represent the artist turning his work into self-portraits that portrays the artist in a mythical world of strange creatures. The world that the artist is the lover and beloved at the same time, forever left alone in the mythical kingdom he created for himself. In one of his poems, he says, "I have no one. I am a bird without feathers, lonesome and alone." In the 9-panel piece titled Leonardo, Forugh and I, Osuli portraits a woman trapped within the frameworks of tradition and surrounded by instruments of violence as she breastfeeds a headless child. The title of the work refers to Leonardo da Vinci and Forugh Farrokhzad, the prominent figure of modern feminist Iranian literature. The artist includes verses from Farrokhzad's poem, which is about violence in society. Pregnant women gave birth to headless infants. They had cradles for shame, buried themselves in graves.
Mazdak Ayyari was born in Iran in 1976 and studied photography. He is known outside of the country for his collection of photographs titled Family Still Frames. He carefully observes his surrounding with his camera and creates a detailed record of everything he sees, as in a personal documentary film. His precise point of view sometimes distorts the borders between pure documentation and art, presenting his audience with serious questions. Are these photographs staged? Are the subjects in Ayyari's frames acting a role? But in fact, there is no staging involved in Ayyari's photographs. His camera always acts as his eye. Unlike most of us who simply observe and take no notice of numerous images each day, Ayyari records what he sees. Over the past 2 decades, his camera and his eyes have always worked together. What the artist is creating could be also studied in the context of history of photography in Iran, where painters and draftsmen started to use this newly imported medium to observe what was going on around them and documenting their everyday life with an artistic view. A journey started just 3 years after the invention of photography. This exhibition presents his collection, Family Still Frames, with 20 photographs and a slideshow with 600 images selected from more than 1,000 captured by Ayyari from 1999 until today. Parviz Tanavali is a leading Iranian artist, author, historian, scholar, and collector who was born in Tehran in 1937. Tanavali is also considered a pioneer of pop art outside of Europe and North America. For more than 5 decades, he has studied a very particular type of decorations in Persian houses. In 18th and 19th century, lithographs which were brought to Iran from Europe as souvenirs were used to decorate some of the most historic buildings and small palaces of the Qajar era. Such images, which were often decorated with Persian mirrorwork and plasterwork and installed on the walls, eventually found their way into the lives of ordinary people, recreated on walls, trays, plates, and rugs, to the point that it became an integral part of the popular culture in the Qajar era. Tanavali, in his book on these creative decorations using portraits of European women, says, "The operation was simple. It consisted in placing a ready-made object within a new environment, thus breathing new life into it. The process was not so very different from the work of the pop artists in the 1960s, a century later. He chose the same approach to create many of his own works, such as the Farangi Women series. Farangi means European in Farsi. In the First Crusade, the French Crusaders were called Franks, and as Old French became the first language spoken in the Crusaders' states, the term Frank was soon associated with Western European Christians in the Muslim world, and the word became Farang in the Persian language. Tanavali produced a portfolio of limited edition prints titled Farangi Women and Me, in which he made collages of himself and 5 of these Farangi women whom he had followed for more than 5 decades and found their visage not only on the interiors of aristocratic houses but also on trays, rugs, carpets, and popular prints, and so on. Tanavali is also considered one of the pioneers of modern carpet design in Iran, as well as a very important researcher on this very Persian handcraft. Continuing this exercise in creating works of art using images of Farangi women, Tanavali has also designed a collection of rugs that the very first piece is on display in this museum for the first time. To make the current collection of Farangi women carpets, Tanavali has taken images from antique pictorial tribal rugs and used traditional materials and techniques employed to weave Persian carpets for thousands of years. For this very special piece, he used one of the original and oldest techniques of weaving called bijar weave, and wools dyed with organic and traditional dyes. The neon light used to complete this one-of-a-kind piece is also one of Tanavali's signatures media, which he has often employed in his works for about 6 decades. Tarlan Rafi'i, the artist and also the co-curator of this exhibition, was born in Tehran in 1980. In her work, which primarily falls into the category of pop art, the artist focuses on the art and culture of modern and contemporary Iran and their direct relationship with Iranian lives. In doing so, she pays particular attention to the inhabitants of Tehran, not as a capital city, but as a modern city with many immigrants from other ethnicities and cultures. The role that art, particularly folk art, plays for different segments of the society has always been one of her main interests. In the series shown in the exhibition, she focuses on the Persian poet Hafiz and his role as a source of solace for Iranians in hopeless times. His divan, or the collection of his poems, is one of the most sacred books in Persianate world. For his mystic personality and the complicated yet simple language, Hafiz has been treated like a prophet, and his book as a source of prophecies. Rafi uses fragments of this book in this series of works, as well as popular illustrations created for Divan, alongside the images of divination cards and blueprints of fast-built bomb shelters published by the authorities for Iranian families during the 8-year war between Iran and Iraq. With her work, Rafi revives the memory of a time not so long ago when people kept their spirit up by reading Hafiz in their various beautiful dialects, laughing and making jokes and hoping for a better tomorrow without war. Reza Bangiz, a nationally celebrated and renowned artist and university professor, was born in 1937. Bangiz made his mark on the Iranian art scene in the early 1960s and received the Royal Prize at the Second Biennale of Tehran in 1960. In his work, Bangiz depicts scenes with alleyways and bazaars that no longer exist, or at least can no longer be found in Tehran, and in doing so tells the stories of the inhabitants of old Tehran. Many of these images are probably based on memories of his youth or the stories of men and women who lived in pre-modern Tehran. His piece Ashura, which is shown in this exhibition, focuses on traditions of mourning for the martyrdom of the third Shia Imam. In this silk screen printed on canvas, he depicts 9 ceremonial scenes with mourners carrying flags, banners, and processions which are held on a sacred day in the Shia calendar. Many of these ceremonies and performances have roots in pre-Islamic traditions, such as mourning for Siavash, the most sacred figure in Zoroastrian sacred texts, or Alam, a metal model of a cypress tree, which has been used from ancient Persia to the present time to represent beauty, pride, youth, and steadfastness. Works on display in this exhibition are separated illustrations from one of the most popular religious books in 19th century, Tufan al-Buka, or The Deluge of Tears, printed in 1858. These hand-colored lithographs were created by Mirza Muhammad Hassan and depict different scenes from folk religious stories of Shia holy figures. Albert Joseph Gasteiger learned the Persian language in Vienna, and in 1860 he was hired as an engineer for constructing roads and railroads by Iranian government, and also as a teacher for Darul Funun, the Polytechnic College of Tehran. He served in Iran for more than 2 decades, and for his services in building roads and training Iranian engineers, he received the rank of general as well as the title Khan, a Persian nobility title, and Muhandes Bashi, meaning head of engineers, and from that point onward he was known as General Albert Joseph Gasteiger Khan, both in Austria and in Iran. Gasteiger Khan visited the Shah of Iran, Nasser-ed-Din Shah, wearing local dress and a Tyrolean hat, and after learning about his capabilities, the king presented him with the title of engineer officer and hired him to teach at the military school of Darul Funun. On his return to Austria, Gasteiger Khan donated part of his art collection from Iran, including a number of drawings and paintings from the Qajar era, to the Tiroler Landesmuseen, some of which are included in the current exhibition.